Thanks for joining us on another episode of Tea and Trowels. I'm one of your hosts, Emma, and today we're joined with Dr. Carmen Lauger Diaz. So would you like to introduce yourself and your mug?
Hi, I'm Carmen Lauger Diaz. I teach anthropology at Valencia College. I almost said University of Florida just then. I did graduate from the University of Florida back in 2014, and I did a stint as an adjunct lecturer there. My mug is actually a Doctor Who mug. I actually got this as a present. It was a Reddit gift, Secret Santa present from it was December of 2014, which was actually the same month that I got it the day before I graduated. So I got a Doctor Who mug when I got my doctorate. I also got a necklace from my sister um, with Gallifreyan script. And I also got a pillow because everybody, as a Doctor Who fan and becoming a doctor, everybody was just sending me Doctor Who gifts. But yeah, this is my favorite mug, and it's such a favorite mug that it has a crack where my coffee keeps leaking, but I really like it, and I will be looking for a replacement soon. But so far, I'm just gonna keep it. Yeah.
My mug today, ironically enough, is from Disney because I figured since you're local here in Orlando, this is my attempt at being a themed mug. So we'll get started with our interview questions here. Our first one is, why did you become an archaeologist?
Um, oh, the money's so good. No. No. So I always had an interest for archaeology from very early on. At first, I didn't know the word to use for it. And some of my early anthropology slash archaeology type of memories are, well, playing with dirt. Those were definitely there. But also my grandfather would always be telling, well, he would always be collecting rocks. He would see rocks that he found shiny and he would just put them in his pocket. But then in the plot of land, I say plot of land, we're not talking about, we're really talking about, you know, a glorified backyard. Um, and he would always go out there, and then he would make this path, and the path wasn't leading anywhere, but that's how he would just pass his time. He would just start putting the rocks and make this path, and if you sat there with him, he would start telling you stories. Most of the stories were not true, I'm pretty sure. He would say that he got woken up by a rooster calling out his name, so I'm pretty sure that was false. Um, but he would tell stories, and they would always be like very folkloric type stories. Obviously, I didn't have the words for that when I was 3, 4, or 5 years old, but it always really interested me, this whole idea of stories and how he would weave them into making this path. Um, and so obviously, I was also, as a kid growing up in the late 80s, 90s, back when Discovery Channel and History Channel had a lot of wonderful documentaries. I was always fascinated by them, and it just made a lot of sense. Um, I did get um, seduced by engineering when I was in actually when I applied for college back home at the University of Puerto Rico. I wanted to create my own degree. I wanted to get into the interdisciplinary studies. And I remember being told, that's anthropology. And I said, you could just do, and I was like, no, this is my own thing. This is how wonderful and creative and imaginative I am. Um, and then I got seduced into engineering. And then I decided that engineering was definitely not for me. And so when I went back, um, and I thought I'll make my own degree, I was a little bit wiser. And I was like, no, it's anthropology and definitely archaeology. Um, but it took a lot of stubbornness for me to get there.
I was going to say shocking, an archaeologist being stubborn.
I don't know. I don't know
Wow,
what you're
no,
talking about.
not at all. So kind of keeping on the same theme about how you got here now, in about 30 seconds or less, what is your current research?
My current research is looking, I try to rehearse this. We're looking at human environment interactions in the span of about 3,000 to 5,000 years. And so we're just trying to look at how those interactions are happening in Southwest Puerto Rico.
Awesome. That is very much under 30 seconds. If you want to elaborate.
I can elaborate now. Okay. Um, so it's the Proyecto Arqueológico del Suroeste. It's on it's in the lands of the Fish and Wildlife Service in Puerto Rico. And it has expanded a little bit outside of it since as we have gotten access to some collections that are from outside of the federal lands. But the southwest of Puerto Rico is incredibly dry, and it has a very long history of occupation. So it presents us with a wonderful opportunity to look at how people have basically dealt with things like droughts as well as sea level change and hurricanes. Because it's the Caribbean. And we've been working there since 2015. So we've had the opportunity to expand on it by collecting some oral histories with how people have dealt with, were dealing with Maria and are still dealing with Maria. Um, we tend to go there on a year by year basis. Like every year we try to go. This is the first year that we haven't gone, and we're ecstatic to go back. We thought that we were going to have to deal with the earthquakes that were happening because the epicenter of the earthquakes is within tens of miles of where we're working. As it happened, the earthquakes weren't the issue. COVID became the issue, so we haven't been able to go back. But in the meantime, we've been working on. Um, we've been able to publish some papers on cooking, specifically with the shell midden site that we have very productive shell exploitation site. So that's kind of where our focus is. However, because of my particular focus, hopefully we'll be going into some of the Cold War era um, uh, research that we have, the federal lands before they became part of the Fish and Wildlife Service. And this is why I needed that 30 seconds, because then I can talk about this for like an hour. Uh, the Fish and Wildlife Service, before it was Fish and Wildlife Service, it was a CIA facility where they built a listening post for Cuba, and which didn't work out. It was like it took them more years to build the listening post than it took them to figure out, oh, this is not working, and then close the thing down. Um, but it has some very interesting impact on U.S. Puerto Rican relations during the Cold War era. So that's somewhere that I'm really interested in. And part of what I was going to do during spring break was collect some oral histories of the families, of the descendant families that had lost their property when the CIA came in. So hopefully we'll pick that up, and then we can finish the article that's been on the back burner for like a year and a half, and get that out there soon.
No, okay, that's super cool. I'm glad you elaborated, and it's definitely not the whole hour long. You could have. We'll save that for part two.
Okay, good.
So continuing on, what is your favorite tool in your toolkit?
So my favorite tool is unfortunately in Puerto Rico, and it's Trowel, my faithful trowel. It was my first trowel, and it's still with me, and I hold Trowel very dear in my heart. However, I will say that my field notebooks are very important too. And last year, um, I forgot my Right on the Rain. So I started using this. I just went to Walgreens and got this one. And the guys in the crew started teasing that it was my Barbie field book. So my Barbie field book. And this year I was supposed to go back there with my Right on the Rain, and I thought that you'd appreciate that. Uh, I did put the sticker before you mentioned during the interview, so uh, however I found that interesting. But the 2020 I ended up putting a sad face because it won't be until 2021. But yeah, so I really So this is brand new, so I'm kind of excited about, using the brand new one.
Yeah, there's something so great about those first few pages
Oh, yes.
notebook. Oh, I'm a, I think there's a word for it, but one of the people who like loves stationery and will
Yeah,
buy it for no purpose. Just yeah, right. Thank you cards that I'll never send. Other things.
yeah, yeah. So I ended up having to get into Rocketbook because so many different I have so many different notebooks, and I thought to myself, maybe I should do something for the environment. So Rocketbooks, they're the pages, you can wipe them, but more importantly, you can take pictures of them, and the Rocketbook app will save them and collate them into folders that you can upload to your computer. And so I've been using that, and
That's
that's
awesome.
been pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can talk about stationery also for hours. So
Now that's gonna be part 3. So,
stationaries and tea.
ooh, yeah, I feel like I'll need to get like a different type of job for that. So what is your best worst field story?
Oh, there's so many. I was trying to figure out what would be best, worst. And I think there are so many memories of this. We did an 8-week survey um, back in 2008, and it was my first experience as lab director. So it was like, oh my God, I've been promoted. Uh, um, but I mean, a glorified lab director. Um, and there were so many different things, and just as we were moving through the different things that we did, it just felt like we were in a video game, because the first parcel that we surveyed, it had a lot of thorns. And so, it was only 3 of us that had field experience, and then we had like 8 that did not. And so we're like, okay, it's just thorns. Just, you wear long sleeves if you can, and just try not to fall into thorns, and we should be fine. But then the next parcel, it was thorns and bees. And then the next parcel, there were thorns and bees and ravines. And like every parcel just kept expanding on difficulty. And we were just trying to keep it all together, because it was 2 PhD students and me as a master's student with 8 kids. Well, not they were 18, 19, 20. But it was just this whole, everything's gonna be fine. It's okay. You got stung by bees. It's okay. There was a bull that rushed towards us. It's okay. Just trying. Let's just keep it all together. It's going to be fine. So it was just this sort of ever increasing difficulty, but it was incredibly fun. Um, but yeah, lots of stories within that. But I think that was just to sort of keep it together. Everything's gonna be okay. So after those 8 weeks, I went to another project, and some of the students went through to the other project, and you could see then that they were just completely, they were not in it. They were just, we're done. This is not, this is not for us. Some of the others did make it through, and they're kicking ass now in the field, so we're happy for that. But you could tell that they were like, this is, please, no, not more, not another one.
The rude introduction to archaeology.
Yeah.
Oh, and kind of keeping with that idea about introduction to archaeology, how do you think that archaeology can save the world?
I'm going to refer back to something that we were talking to
Yes.
out, not while you were not recording, but this whole we have this tendency, we have this short-term memory on things that are happening, and um, we even think of the civil rights movement, and we think of those black and white pictures, and it seems so far removed, when it definitely is not. um, but I think archaeology can present that. First of all, there are many signs that we can see that are happening today. And I think that bringing um, it can help increase the sense of urgency, because it's not that something has happened and it's no longer happening. It's more of, no, it has happened, it's still happening, and if we don't do anything, it will keep happening. So I think that that's where my role, where I've been wanting to really focus on.
Yeah. I think, especially with archaeology, it kind of shows that history isn't necessarily this, progressive linear line, but it's
Hmm.
kind of perpetrated through from the 19th century onwards, that we keep getting better and better. But reality is we just keep going through these cycles.
Yeah,
It's cycles with new technology, new people, etc. And it's just the processes that we see in the past archaeologically, we see them that are happening today, and we can predict where things will go based on a lot of that. So
yeah,
I would 100% agree.
yeah. I think that's it's really that old, um, the saying, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it themselves, and it seems so cheesy and so like, I don't know, like almost you're justifying why you should know people's past. Like, it just, people say it so much that it loses its meaning. But it's incredibly true. It's incredibly important, and I think especially with what's been happening with both the pandemic and um, the issues of systemic racism, which it's not a new thing. It's definitely not a new thing. Um, but I think we have maybe a little bit more time in our hands now, and or we've reached that burst point where, not maybe, we have reached that bursting point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think taking it as a role of really looking into our education system and how we speak about the civil rights movement, and how that really continues with that idea of how history gets taught, how we can kind of change that moving forward, and we can add to it. Because I will 100% say that my education growing up, the civil rights history was always taught as though it was something in deep past, which made
Yes.
sense when I knew my mom was alive during the civil rights movement. But it was taught as though it was over and done with
Yeah.
a long time ago. But in
Yeah.
reality, it was never taken care of. It was never finished, like a lot of history books or a lot of people taught it that way.
Yeah.
It
Um,
was that way.
Back in Puerto Rico, we had, and I mean, a lot of the Latin American countries and in the Caribbean, there's obvious issues with systemic racism as well. But oftentimes, well, civil rights movement, that's a US thing. You know, they are the ones that have this issue. We do not. And as a daughter of somebody, of a man who is Black and a woman who is white passing, yeah, I know that that's not, I know that their reality was very different. And so it was always very mind boggling to me how things were dealt with.
I agree. I was taught in the North, so aspect, because we definitely did not
That's,
teach.
it's an issue of the South, it's not the North. Yeah.
Although I will not get on that tangent, because it was definitely an issue up north, just branded differently.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so our last question of the day is: what is keeping you sane during these times?
Um, so basically, nothing. Wait, am I sane? No, in all seriousness though, I think I've taken refuge in video gaming. That's been, that's been my go-to. I've I have done, I have been trying to reread. I read this series of essays, um, for, well, I had read some of the essays for um, a reading book, not a reading book, a journal club that we had back at EOF. And then I saw that she had a compilation of her essays, and I assigned it for one of my classes, and it was really good. But I don't know, there's some sanity to some of the essays, in terms of helping me process things that I'm seeing. So I found myself going back to it and rereading some of them. Um, but then it gets too serious and too close to reality, so I stop reading, and then I go into video games where I can I can be exposed to um, things that I wish that I could do, but that I would never do in real life.
Yes, I think the virtual realities are becoming a safe haven. Well, that's kind of the end of our formal interview. So I will thank you for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
This is
And have a great day. Cheers.
cheers.